If you enjoy the content on this channel, please like and subscribe. The Man in the Iron Mask is a 1998 American action drama film written, directed and produced by Randall Wallace. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio in a dual role as the title character Philippe Bourbon, the Man in the Iron Mask, and King Louis XIV. Also starring are Jeremy Irons as Aramis, John Malkovich as Athos, Gérard Depardieu as Porthos, and Gabriel Byrne as D'Artagnan. Some of the characters are from Alexandre Dumas' D'Artagnan romances, and some elements are very loosely adapted from the 1847-1850 novel The Vieille Comédie de Bragelonne. This was Leonardo DiCaprio's first film, following the success of Titanic in 1997. The film centers on the aging four musketeers, Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan, during the reign of King Louis XIV. It explores the mystery of the Man in the Iron Mask, with a plot closer to the flamboyant 1929 version starring Douglas Fairbanks, The Iron Mask, and the 1939 version directed by James Whale than the original Dumas book. The film received mixed reviews, but was a financial success, grossing $183 million worldwide against a $35 million budget. In this version, the Man in the Iron Mask is introduced as prisoner number 6438900, based on the number related to his namesake, found at the Bastille. The Chateau Vent de Vicomte acts as the primary residence of the king, as Versailles was still early in its construction and years away from Louis establishing residence there. The film grossed $17 million on its opening weekend, in second place, ironically behind the Titanic, a film also starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Even though Gabriel Byrne, in the role of D'Artagnan, is supposed to be in character much younger than the older musketeers, Byrne, Jeremy Irons, and Gérard Depardieu are in fact almost all the same age. Irons and Depardieu were both born in 1948, and Byrne was born in 1950. John Malkovich was born in 1953, making him the actual youngest of the four men. Each of the four musketeers are played by actors with different nationalities. Jeremy Irons is English, John Malkovich American, Gérard Depardieu is French, and Gabriel Byrne is Irish. Leonardo DiCaprio's mask was made of polystyrene. Anthony Hopkins was the first choice of Randall Wallace to play Aramis. He turned it down due to filming commitments to The Mask of Zorro. Sam Neill and Alan Rickman were also considered for the role before Jeremy Irons accepted the part. MGM discovered that the audience of the movie attracted was directly related to the appeal of Leonardo DiCaprio, being 55% female and 46% under the age of 25. Although Louis XIV, who was a real king, is prominently featured in character in the movie, the closing credits state that all the characters are fictitious. This statement involves a loophole common to movies of this nature. The film portrayal diverges considerably from the authentic descriptions of the real person, so the character is fictitious in the sense that the words and actions of the character are not claimed to be things that the real person said or did. Principal photography started in April 1997, making DiCaprio only 22 years old when he did Man in the Iron Mask. Prior to filming, he took 1 week break after he finished doing Titanic in March 1997. Afterwards, he flew over to Paris to do this movie. Kevin Kline passed on the opportunity to play Athos. Although the film is heavily fictionalized by the book it is based on, Louis XIV did have a younger brother called Philippe, whose life is well documented. There really was a man in the Iron Mask. First described by philosopher Voltaire on apparent first-hand accounts, a masked man was kept under surveillance by armed musketeers at all times. In reality, the mask was velvet, and all indicates that it was a precaution rather than a punishment. His guards were under orders to kill him if he spoke of anything other than his daily needs, and despite popular depictions, he was kept in a comfort and relative luxury. He was moved from prison to prison, including the infamous La Bastille, and then when he died, he was buried under the name Eustache Daguerre. Modern historians claim that he was possibly an older half-brother of Louis XIV, or the king's real father, born from an affair between Queen Anne of Austria to a Bourbon nobleman arranged by a Cardinal Richelieu. In both cases, the resemblance seemed to be the root of the problem, hence the mask. When writing the novel, Alexandre Dumas based his plot on this case, and the identity of the Man in the Iron Mask remains unsolved. The film is primarily set in 1662, during the reign of Louis XIV in France. The aging musketeers, who once served with the crown with honour, are disillusioned by the king's tyranny. They discover that Louis XIV has a twin brother, Philippe, who has been imprisoned in an iron mask to keep his existence a secret. The musketeers plot to replace the despotic king with his brother, aiming to restore justice and fairness to France. Now, firstly, the film boasts a very strong cast, with notable performances here, of course, coming from the likes of John Malkovich, Gabriel Byrne, and Jeremy Irons. Look, let's firstly focus on the positives of the film. For me, one of the movie's standouts is its visual appeal. This is heightened by its impressive production design and period-accurate costumes. The sets and costumes successfully transported me back to the 17th century France. Look, this is really an action swashbuckling adventure film. and it delivers on well-choreographed sword fights and swashbuckling sequences, and the film captures the adventurous spirit of Dumas' novel. Look, for me, I consider a film like this a work of pure fiction. Yes, it draws influence from actual historical figures like Louis XIV, but really the whole film is basically just an imagination, loosely inspired by real-life persons. Unfortunately, a film like this, though, at the time relied heavily on its A-list actor star power. Getting the likes of one of the hottest actors at the time in Leonardo DiCaprio was almost the film's selling point. And yes, it probably did work in a box office sense, but this is by no means Leonardo DiCaprio's finest performance. In fact, he comes off rather wooden, and certainly hasn't reached the depth of the actor that he's become to this day. However, I do feel he's laden with a poor script and a poor direction from Randall Wallace here as well. DiCaprio, of course, would go on to win the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Screen Couple for his interaction as twins. This is a film, when I originally watched it back in the late 1990s, that I absolutely loved. It was fantastical, it was over the top, and I loved the historical aspects to it. But unfortunately, it's a film that hasn't really dated well. The dialogue is incredibly cheesy. And what more can I say about Gérard Depardieu's portrayal here as Porthos? The character is just somewhat distasteful. He acts as the sort of comedic foil for the film. But it's also played out that he's this absolute sex god, and that women just swoon and throw themselves at him. And frankly, I found that somewhat off-putting, and really aged quite poorly. In order to understand this film's popularity, you'd have to go back to the late 1990s, when Leonardo DiCaprio was the pin-up boy for all the young women. And that really is the selling point of this whole film. I think they were less interested in the actual history and the story of the film, and rather just having Leonardo DiCaprio cash in on his fame from Titanic. As I mentioned earlier, the characters are incredibly shallow. The likes of John Malkovich, Jeremy Irons, Gabriel Byrne and Leonardo DiCaprio all try their best to bring something out of their performances, but Randall Wallace is just not a director that knows how to get the best out of his actors. The film for me lacks a cohesive vision, and the director seems more interested in flashy set pieces than crafting a compelling story. The result is a disjointed film that fails to engage on an emotional or intellectual level. Look, as a child, this was a film I really loved, but as an adult now, unfortunately, it hasn't aged very well. This is a film that really could have been so much more. It could have been a swashbuckling, absolute epic, built on a fantastical tale, but really engaging with the fantastic 17th century history that we know and love so well, or rather just following Dumas' fantastic novel in its own right. Instead, we have a disappointing adaptation that squanders the potential of its source material and its talented cast. The film's misguided attempt to blend historical drama with action and star power results in a forgettable cinematic misfire that I loved back in the late 1990s, but unfortunately in today's world really just seems somewhat dated and lost. The Man in the Iron Mask gets a 5.5 out of 10.